It's story time. It was around 2 a.m. in a small apartment near the University of Tokyo when Aiko was video chatting with her boyfriend, Riku. Her roommate Hinata burst out of her room with a giant rolling suitcase behind her and a bulging backpack around her shoulder. Aiko shot her a confused glance and asked what all the bags were for. "I'm heading to my mom's in Kawasaki for a while." "I told you that." "What?" "No, you can't be traveling right now. Haven't you been watching the numbers? COVID cases are the highest they've ever been. You absolutely can't leave." "Whoa, you need to calm down. Me and Riku haven't seen each other in weeks, and we're 10 minutes away, but you don't see us complaining about it, do you?" "Hey, Hinata," Riku's voice echoed from Aiko's laptop. "This is for our own safety." Hinata looked away for a moment. "My mom's, she's not getting any younger. If something were to happen to her and I wasn't there..." She trailed off and looked away. Aiko exhaled deeply and apologized. Hinata reassured her that she had plenty of hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and that the trains would probably be pretty empty. "I'll be fine, I promise. I'll see you once everything calms down a bit." Hinata hobbled through the living room with her bags. Just as she reached for the door, Aiko added, "Oh, and beware of Kuchisake-Onna." Hinata turned to her. Riku sighed. "Really, Aiko? God, you're so immature sometimes. Just let her leave." "Wait, Kuchisake-Onna? That's like some super old urban legend, right? So you know the story then." "Ignore her, Hinata. After what happened to Naomi, Hinata needs to know. Naomi was not killed by Kuchisake-Onna. It was a total freak accident. If you're going to be traveling alone right now, you need to know the story of Kuchisake-Onna. A long time ago, in the Heian period, lived a samurai and his beautiful wife. She was so beautiful, in fact, that anyone who saw her couldn't help but stare at her enchanting brown eyes, her smooth skin, and flowing ebony hair. She would walk around town and coyly ask those who stared, "Am I pretty?" while fluttering her lashes flirtatiously. She loved the attention, but her husband did not. She would reassure him that it was all completely harmless. "Aren't you proud to have such a beautiful and desirable wife?" Her husband did his best to subside his jealousy, but one day he discovered that she was a liar and that she was being unfaithful to him, just as he had suspected. So one day, when she was brushing her hair, he snuck up behind her and grabbed her head. He drew a knife and dragged the blade across her mouth from cheek to cheek, leaving her with a horrendous gaping wound, a permanent red smile. "Who will think you're pretty now?" he said. She ran out of the house in tears. Everyone stared at her, but this time in disgust. She pleaded for their help, but no one would come near her. She ran far away from her village until she could run no longer. She laid on the ground by the river, blood flowing from her mouth just as the water next to her. This is where she died, completely alone. After her death, there were rumors that she had returned to the village, but as a vengeful ghost. They called her Kuchisake-Onna, the slit-mouthed woman. Villagers claimed to see her wounded face in the streets at night when they were completely alone. Well, those who were lucky enough to get away in time. Centuries later, people still report seeing Kuchisake-Onna. They say that she blends into the crowds wearing a trench coat and a surgical mask to hide her twisted grin. She targets those who are alone. She will approach you and ask you a question. "Am I pretty?" If you answer yes, she will remove her mask and reveal her disfigured face and ask you again, "Am I pretty now?" And if you don't answer yes again, she will— "Oh crap, I'm gonna be late for my train." Hinata interrupted Aiko's story and made her way toward the door. Aiko called after her, but Hinata was already gone. The streets were dead quiet. Hinata chuckled to herself at the thought of Kuchisake-Onna being real. Just then her phone rang, causing her to skip a step. "Hey, you." "Ugh, I thought she'd never get off the call," said Riku's voice from the phone. "I'll see you in a little bit." "Not unless Kuchisake-Onna gets you." She finally reached the train station and waited at the platform, which was completely empty, just as she expected. She boarded, took out her disinfectant wipes, and wiped down her seat before sitting down. As the train began to move, she pulled off her mask and placed it in her bag. She pulled out her phone and began playing a mobile game. At the next stop, she noticed, out of the corner of her eye, someone get on the car adjacent to hers. She looked up and saw a woman with long black hair down her back. Her trench coat collar was popped up a bit, and her surgical mask hid most of her face. Plenty of people wear trench coats, Hinata thought to herself. She looked back down at her game, but she couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the next car over. She lifted her head again to look at her and saw her pressed up against the window of the car, her dark brown eyes looking right at her. Hinata jumped in her seat. The woman opened the door and came inside. "Hi, I'm so sorry. Can I ask you a question? I think I got on the wrong train, but I'm not sure. Are we going north or south?" North," Hinata replied, still catching her breath from being startled. "Okay, perfect. Thank you so much." The woman bowed and sat down across from Hinata. Hinata pulled her phone out again. Her eyes may have been on her game, but her focus was entirely on the woman sitting across from her. "I'm so sorry," the woman spoke again, leaning towards Hinata. "Can I ask you another question?" Of course. What's up?" "Well," the woman stood up. "I'm on my way to see my boyfriend." She took a step closer. "We haven't seen each other since the lockdown, and gosh, this sounds so silly, but..." She took another step closer. Every muscle in Hinata's body was completely tense. "How do I look? Like, do I look okay, or..." The woman was a foot away from Hinata, silently waiting for a response. I think you look great, mask and all." "Oh, good, thanks. I appreciate that. But just to be sure..." She crouched down until she was face to face with Hinata. "Do you think I'm pretty now?" The woman peeled the mask off her face to reveal a mouth completely cut open at the sides, revealing all of her rotten teeth. The woman let out a loud and pungent breath in Hinata's face as Hinata's screams echoed inside the empty train car. At the Tabata station, Riku was waiting at the platform. He checked the time on his phone every couple of seconds. Finally, the train arrived, and Hinata stepped out, mask on her face. She didn't say a word. She slowly walked over to Riku and fell into his arms. He removed the mask around her face and gasped. Her mouth had been slit open, ear to ear. Hinata collapsed onto the ground. Riku dropped to his knees next to her and cried into her neck. He heard footsteps coming from the train. A pair of black boots approached him. He looked up. The masked woman in a trench coat was standing above him. "Can I ask you a question?"